So now that we got through all the acronyms, how much does it cost to get compliant?
Great question. The answer to these questions generally starts with it depends.
I've heard that.
But we like to break down the investment for becoming compliant into kind of 3 buckets. Your first bucket is going to be this assessment. Right? You need to figure out where your current state is and where you need to get to. That assessment project normally includes going through a gap analysis for all the controls, looking at remediation recommendations, looking at the pieces of the framework and figuring out how are we going to get from point A to point B. A gap assessment generally, I would say, takes in the neighborhood of 90 days, depending upon coordination between parties. And in general, I would say you should expect to spend between $15,000 to $20,000 to get an assessment done. I often get the question, is the assessment less if I have a simple environment? Maybe a little. If there's no infrastructure to deal with, if there's no pieces to look at for how are you securing this, how are you securing that, it might be simpler, but you still have to go through all 110 controls, and you have to know that it's taken care of.
So in that vein, a level 1 might be less than a level 2.
It's a good point, yes. A level 1, we've only got to look at 17 controls, then maybe you're looking at $7,000 to $10,000.
There you go.
Right, a level 2 would be that 15 to 20. If you have an extraordinarily complex, large environment, multi-site, etc., could be more than that. And that's your first piece of the investment. Figure out where you are and where you need to go.
Yeah.
Once you get that assessment complete, there's going to be remediation. Remediation could look like projects that need to get done. For example, you might need to migrate your Microsoft environment to GCC High. That's going to be a project. That's going to cost a one-time fee to be able to do that.
We've got a project for time and effort.
Yep, and then and the licensing actually goes into the third component for me, but there's going to be other kinds of projects that are those one-time investments that might be segmenting your network or implementing certain security controls that are kind of one-time projects. From what we've seen, again, all depends upon the environment and the state you start at, you're probably looking at somewhere from $20,000 to $100,000+ for those projects to get that done. There's I think very few we've ever seen that had so little to do it would fall under that. But certainly, again, large complex environment, if all the servers are running, server 2008 and have to be replaced, you're going to have a big ticket on your hands. So that's a second component, is doing the remediation one-time stuff. But then compliance is an ongoing thing. So you've got ongoing costs that happen. Some of that...
get there and stay there.
You got to get there, you got to stay there. Some of that is the licensing you mentioned, for example, right? The Microsoft 365 GCC High licensing is more than traditional licensing, sometimes up to double per user for that. There's going to be ongoing need for things like vulnerability scanning, penetration testing, employee awareness training, other types of security services that happen on a regular basis that need to be put into a program you're going to have to pay for monthly. And then you've got things like, security monitoring and
log retention.
Yeah, and even management of these tools like multi-factor authentication and the threat awareness tools and the endpoint protection.
They don't just work all the time?
It would be great if they did, but that's generally an ongoing investment that you're going to get into a program where you have to pay a monthly amount to be able to stay compliant in there. The range I like to use in there is somewhere between $250, could be up to $300 per computer user to stay compliant at that point. Again, those prices will vary based upon your environment's complexity, the things that need to be secured in there. But to give you a starting range for what that would be from an ongoing investment standpoint, you would look at that. And I would say that would include your, what I'll call traditional managed support provider cost. So it wouldn't be on top of that. That would
Yeah,
include
this
that.
is an all-in type of thing.
Yeah, if one company's going to come in all in and do that for you, it would probably be about in that range.